Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we welcome you into the portion of Liberty Nation Radio which we entitle Talkin Liberty. I guess you could call it our signature segment.
Mom does, Tim.
Oh, I forgot to say what is our signature segment, but that's all right. This is a second signature.
For the more cultured listener, too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we saved the best
show.
for last
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Okay, sure. Got it out of your system. Scott Cosenza,
They don't
ladies
open
and gentlemen.
for me, Tim, okay? Or I don't open for them. They open for me. I screwed that up.
Yeah, you're there all
Sorry.
week. You're here all week. Okay. We just spent 30 seconds we'll never get back, Scott. More importantly, 30 or now approaching 40 seconds of our listeners' time that they'll never get back. So let's dive right into a story you covered for LibertyNation.com.
What a doozy, Tim.
Free speech unlawful for Connecticut kids. Basically, they were arrested for saying a word.
That's right. They said the N-word. Various news stories I've read said that they shouted it, Tim, but my investigation reveals no instance of shouting it. In fact, the exact opposite. They were playing a juvenile game amongst themselves. These are two college kids, drunk and walking home from the bars early one morning or late at night, as you may change it. And they had played this game where they would say some vulgar word, and whoever, at sort of very loud volume, and whoever didn't match the volume kind of lost the game, right? A juvenile prank. And then one of them switched to the N-word, but he didn't shout it to him. In fact, he whispered it or spoke softly it. Mm-hmm. And the person who called the police on these students, in fact, was recording them with video and didn't hear what they said and had to use post-production video techniques to boost the audio. And only then did they hear it. They called the police, and the police arrested them and charged them with violation of a Connecticut law that basically it says that you can't disparage someone based on certain...
What?
Yeah.
How do you put that in law?
Ridicule. It's an anti-ridicule law.
And who gets to determine what ridicule is?
Well, you don't legally do so, if that's what you're saying. In other words, how can you do so consistent with First Amendment and notions of free speech?
Yeah, that
the
little
answer is
issue
that
of
you
the
can't.
First
But if you
Amendment.
don't care about that, and instead what you care about is being progressive or woke, then it doesn't matter, and you get to just do whatever you want. And I didn't read the men's name who were arrested because I don't think it's fair to, that they should be tarnished and followed around for the rest of their lives with this. But Thomas Katsoulias is the name of the Yukon president, and it seems like he's got his prints all over this in terms of the direction of where this went with an actual custodial arrest with jail time possibility for these students.
So, arrested for saying a word. Does that mean this is a hate crime? Is that what is being called, or is it the equivalent of that?
Well, I think the jails would be full if they started arresting black guys who said that word. So I don't know how these people identify, but that's the idea, is that it's somehow hateful.
But the whole idea of a hate crime is a subjective judgment to begin with. It doesn't say whether you broke the law or how you broke it.
You offer that like it's a powerful rebuttal against wokeness, Tim. That's no rebuttal against it.
I just don't. No. I've never understood it.
It's only a powerful rebuttal if you care about, logic and consistency and those sorts of things.
Who needs that?
Yeah, no.
A New Orleans lawyer has sued the State Bar Association over the use of his dues for lobbying efforts. Now, this strikes me, Scott, as like the right to work debate that we've had in this country, and unions where some members say they don't want to pay the dues because some of it's going to a political cause that they don't support, but the union leadership does.
New Orleans lawyer Randy Boudreaux is our hero, Tim.
Perfect name for New Orleans.
Yes.
It's got to be.
And I don't even know if I should lead with this. It's a data point. He happens to be a gay guy, and so he sort of runs anti to the progressive notion that the politics is unifying, and he finds that the political pronunciations from the bar of Louisiana are not something that he wants to engage in. So he's compelled, as all lawyers are who are active members of their bar, you got to pay dues to the bar. The Bar Association takes that money, and in some instances around the country, they use that money to lobby, for instance, for political purposes,
right.
Support political candidates in different ways, not direct contributions often, but in softer ways that pass legal muster. And he's saying that this is a compelled speech against his First Amendment rights. If they need he's not saying they can't take his money to allow him to practice law, but he's saying they can't take it and then spend it on political speech because that means it's compelled speech.
Now, I know that the unions protect themselves, just like the Bar Association is, I'm sure, here, by saying that they're protecting the interests of the greater union, and they do that by contributing to Democrats. Okay, so the question is...
Also, I think, Tim, you make a mistake by not going more granular. The specific Democrats that are their friends, because it's not just that they just give money to Democrats. For them, it's even much more than that. It's much more insidious. In other words, to the accrual of their specific benefit. They get to be the kingmaker.
Now,
right?
I could understand if they followed a corporate model where so many corporations give lavish contributions to candidates of both parties because they want to be at the table whoever wins. But with unions and with the Bar Association, it's not like that. They take sides, and that's a big difference.
Tim, I'm pretty biased here. I can say that any campaign against the governing fathers of a bar association is good news as far as I'm concerned.
You're one of those rogue Federalist Society types, Scott. Oh, boy. Let the word go forth. Scott's a Fed. He's a Fed. Now, the White House. You knew we had to hit the White House at some point, but they are suing California over a cap and trade deal with Quebec, where I was last weekend. And here's the thing. This is a matter of California, essentially, whether they have the ability to have their own state foreign policy with a foreign entity, in this case, one province in Canada.
Mon Dieu, Tim.
Oh, nicely done. How long did you have to rehearse that one?
Impromptu. That's how I roll.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, when I first saw the headline, I was reading about this story, I thought I couldn't quite get to what it was about in terms of, like, why would somebody from California, why would the Quebecois, like, burn the calories to create this, I don't have any coastal agreements with anybody who lives in California over my gas mileage or anything like that.
Mine actually expired.
Right.
So, yeah.
Your sister city arrangement with somebody in another.
Yeah, it ran out.
So if you peel the onion one layer back, though, all these stories, by the way, they just talk about the emissions and the emissions. Well, this is about money. It's about the ability of the California authorities to extract tax money from people. Okay, what they did was they established this cap and trade deal, which says. They just created this new rule, which is that, hey, if you emit carbon into the atmosphere in some way through productive activity, a manufacturing facility, whatever,
course. Yeah.
You now have to pay us for the right to do so. Just a made up thing. You now have to pay. It's like if you breathe air, you have to pay us. We're enforcing these clean air rules. Like that would be the functional equivalent. And the federal government is saying. No, you can't just create this with Canada, this sort of...
What's the deal with it anyway? I mean, why would they want to have, they're like a challenge between the province of Quebec and the state of California?
What they want to do is... No, they just want... So the right way to think about this, Tim, and I'm not being hyperbolic, is to think of it in a classic, like, mob collection scheme. You win when everybody's on board with the same scheme, right? Like, they need other government actors to be like, yeah, we're in on this scheme, too. We're going to enforce these rules, too. They're our friends. And California would like it if every state did this. They don't care. It's not like they want other people to get in on the goodness of this scheme. They just think it's going to be successful if everybody does it. And they just want the money. It's about taking that money from the producers. That's what this allows them to do. And that's why I think the Trump administration is in opposition to it.
Certainly you're not suggesting that the left's goal is to shut down industry far and wide. Are you?
It's going to be a really bad thing when they run out of other people's money in California. And I think that's going to come sooner rather than later.
They're headed for a crash. How sustainable is it? They're driving the entire middle class out of California. If you're really rich or really poor, you're in the money in California.
That's
you're
right.
all set for
you gotta
life.
Be one of the two.
So you either
no.
You're either uber wealthy or you work
not for
menial
life.
jobs for them.
Until
the
reckoning comes.
Yeah, until the reckoning comes. And any economy, whether it be a federal, state, or county, a sound economy is based on a sound what? Middle class.
Yeah.
And there is none in California because they're being driven out by taxes and regulations and all the full California regalia
by
of
progressive
craziness.
political policies.
And the Republicans, by the way, have no footprints on anything
Is that right?
that happens in California because they've been crushed. They've been overwhelmed. The Democrats dominate every element of state and federal politics in California. So anything that goes wrong, good luck trying to blame the Republicans, which is the usual talking point. Let's move a little bit north to the great state of Montana, whose Supreme Court has reversed a decision on a gun ordinance in the town of Missoula.
I just thought this was a good story because I think it's important that we always recommend or always recognize, rather, that the state Supreme Courts are also a place that we should go. We should be expected to protect our individual rights, not just the federal courts. And so much is done in the federal courts. But in states where some justices have their mind right, Tim, if I'm biased, there is a 5-0 decision striking down a Missoula gun ordinance would require background checks on all firearms. And I just think we need to be able to press for civil rights in both the federal courts and the state courts, and it's a big win in Montana.
Do you think the momentum for more and more gun control that occurred after the most recent tragedies has died down a bit, or is it still at a frenzied pace?
I think it is broad and shallow support. I don't think those people will go out to the polls and be single-issue voters like the people who want to keep the guns are, and that's why I think that they are perpetually behind in that political movement.
Well stated. Protecting your liberty, Scott Cosenza.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. That's it for this edition of Liberty Nation Radio. But a reminder that you can catch the podcast of this program at libertynation.com. And we also have the podcast of The Uprising, our podcast hosted by Scott, plus The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, where past is prologue. So that's it for now, but don't worry, we'll be back with you next week, same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying, stand up for liberty. And we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation Radio.